The title of tonight's event was Join the Dots Between Consumerism, Climate Change and Mental Health. I had already joined the dots between the first two a long time ago, probably with every other person in this room. I was really interested to hear how the last was linked to the first two. In fact, it was the reason I'm here tonight with my son, who's actually now left. I didn't expect any amazing panacea, but I expected some more, say, insightful opinion and possibly get some discussion now. I certainly expected more than despair is a sin. Easy to say, but in doing so, you write off a real anxiety felt by countless young people who may not be here tonight, nor in Bristol, nor in this country. Do you have any comment, George?
Thank you. Yes, well, we didn't actually get round to... it's my fault. I went on so long with the answers I gave that we didn't get round to that crucial part of the discussion, which was the mental health issues. And it is... there's a whole load of ways in which you can come into this. First of all, unquestionably now, there is a real phenomenon of anxiety about climate and environmental breakdown leading to mental health conditions. This has been well documented. There's even therapists now specializing in attending to these conditions. And it is totally rational and understandable that we should respond to this with anxiety disorders, for example. I mean, if we're not suffering from the grief and fear that these issues invoke, we haven't been paying attention. But there's also ways in which our mental health pandemic, the crisis which is now afflicting the entire planet. The Lancet published a report end of last year looking at how this pandemic of mental health disorders is sweeping across the planet. I believe that there are common roots between that and the environmental crisis that we face, because I think that both are driven to a large extent by particular models of consumerism. Now, I don't want to make too hard a linkage between this because there are clear divergences as well. But a big part of the mental health crisis that we face, the global pandemic that we face, is caused by alienation, particularly alienation from each other. This is the age of loneliness, the age of atomization. And Ewan, who I think is in the audience, my collaborator on the album, Breaking the Spell of Loneliness, we toured around the country to try to discuss this huge existential crisis of the splitting apart of this most social of all mammals, and to try to bring people together to actually try to break that spell. Now, this crisis has been propelled to a large extent by an atomizing ideology which tells us we ought to be apart, that we are lone rangers, sole traders, self-made men and women, we are individuals, and has quite deliberately tried to split us apart in order to atomize and rule. And this particular variant of capitalism, called neoliberalism, which is the dominant ideology of our times, has to treat us as entirely individuated beings, has to effectively destroy society in order to allow an economic and political elite free reign. And when Mrs. Thatcher said there is no such thing as society, that was in a way the central manifesto of that creed. Now, it's this same driving force which has been the great accelerant of climate breakdown and environmental breakdown. It has been the monetization of human relations, the instrumentalization of our relationship with each other and with the living world. It has been to treat the living world itself as another form of capital, natural capital. This absurd destructive, crazy term. It's a meaningless term apart from anything else, because capital is a human-made portion of wealth which is used in the pursuit of further profit. You simply cannot have natural capital. It can't even exist as a concept, as capital is conceived. But it's this attempt to commodify everything, including human relations. And I believe that, alongside some of the catastrophic impacts of social media, I mean, I think social media's got many virtues, but it's also this incredibly powerful means of comparison and powerful means of seeking approval, which is a very strong human instinct, is to seek approval. And it gives you, it's this variable reward syndrome, which makes it quite addictive. How many people here, hand on heart, how many people here think they use social media too much? How many people here think they use social media too little? About 3. How many people here think they use it just about right? I think too much wins that by quite a big margin, doesn't it? This is a highly addictive form of consumerism that they've hooked us into, and it's one that sets us apart. It seems to connect us as human beings, but in many ways it sets us apart. And it helps to drive, because of course it's very advertising focused, it helps to drive a further hyper-consumerism. So what I'm trying to show here, and what we did intend to talk about in the first half, and I'm very sorry that we didn't get to it, but what I'm trying to show here is that the crises we're discussing, the mental health crisis and the environmental crisis, are driven to a large extent by the same factors and are weaponized by celebrity. Celebrity, this feature, as I said in the first half, which seems to be detached from stuff, turns out to be absolutely central to the model, to the extent that a celebrity is now President of the United States. Yeah, this is the society of the spectacle, exactly as Guy Debord forecast. It is a remarkably prescient book in, 1968, 69, The Society of the Spectacle. And he described how we are living today. And when you look at the way that the media portrays the issues that confront us, it's all about personalization. It is all about the spectacularization of politics and of public life, rather than the substance of what is actually happening. Now, there's a particular political faction that thrives on spectacularization, that is all about spectacle, all about symbol, all about sensation, all about slogans, rather than substance, and that faction is called fascism. And the resurgence of proto-fascism, of the sort of Trump, Duterte, Erdogan, Orban, Le Pen, Farage variety, and of real actual fascism, which is beginning to emerge in many parts of the world, is driven to a very large extent by the spectacularization of politics and of the media, which creates openings for the political movement which uses spectacle above and beyond everything else that weren't previously there. The media and its political coverage has got a huge amount to answer for. We know that Donald Trump is a reality TV star. So is Nigel Farage. So is Jacob Rees-Mogg. So is Boris Johnson, except the reality TV platform they have is not The Apprentice, it's BBC News and Current Affairs. Particularly Question Time. And all this, sorry, I know it's a very long answer, but it's because it's a missing chunk, so I'm really sorry to go on about this. But all this contributes to this alienation, not only from each other, but also from social forces and from political change, which I think also feeds strongly into the mental health crisis, as indeed does our alienation from nature. And there are a whole series of studies now showing that children brought up without much access to nature are far more prone to anxiety disorders and depression than children brought up with access to a lot of green spaces. We need it. It's part of the warp and weft of our humanity. And so not only do the same factors drive both crises, but the one crisis contributes to the other crisis. That is the linkage that I would make.